canker diseases in the landscape cause a major problem because they cause a branch to die here and there on trees and shrubs. Most of the canker diseases are caused by fungi, and fungi, particularly those that are relatively weak pathogens, unless the plant is weakened by drought stress. And in fact, most canker diseases are made more severe by drought stress. One real common canker-causing fungus is one called botryoshaeria. And botryoshaeria attacks just about any hardwood ornamental that you can name in the landscape. It's a fungus that forms fruiting structures on the dead wood and then spreads from those fruiting structures by wind and rain to nearby twigs and causes cankers, and the cankers girdle the twig and then will kill it. It's probably the main disease that occurs on rhododendrons that have been in the landscape 3, 4, 5 years or longer. And this is a typical sort of symptom that we'll see here, where the plant had done well for a number of years, but now it's dying back one branch at a time. The botryoshaeria can get in any wounds or natural openings, and that includes pruning cuts or leaf scars. And then the fungus will grow into the twig and begin to girdle the twig and kill it. And typically what will happen is the leaves will begin to wilt and then die. And then the fungus will move farther and farther down the branch. The next symptom that will occur is, as the wood dies, the bark over that wood will begin to flake off. The fungus will form fruiting structures right directly on that bark. And you can find little black pimple-like structures just peppering the surface of the wood. Now, another typical symptom for this particular disease is that the wood is often turned abnormally dark. For example, on oak, when oak is attacked by botryoshaeria canker, the area over the cankered wood will turn almost black, and it looks like it's been burned with a blowtorch. And if you look very carefully, you will be able to find fruiting structures on the surface of this blackened wood. You can see the fruiting structures even better on this crabapple twig, where the fungus got in probably one of these wounds down through here, girdled the twig and then killed it, and then started to form these little rough fruiting structures on the surface of the twig. Another symptom that can be sometimes seen on rhododendrons is if we pruned this off and then looked at the interior of the wood, sometimes botryoshaeria will make the pith turn much darker brown than the surrounding wood. Whereas normally you would expect the pith to be a light creamy color, it's a very dark brown in color instead. And it's darker brown than the surrounding wood. Now, botryoshaeria is a normal inhabitant of the surface of the plant. In fact, you can isolate it from the bark of almost any plant in the landscape. So it's there naturally. And it'll get in wounds and natural openings, but it will not cause disease unless the tree or shrub comes under drought stress. Now, if we have a severe drought 1 or 2 years in a row, you can expect botryoshaeria canker to be more prominent over the next several years because the fungus will have gotten in and begun to start canker development and will eventually girdle that twig. So this can be a really severe problem, especially on plants that are reaching specimen size or a larger size in the landscape because they're well established, they're beginning to grow well, and then drought predisposes them to this fungus. Because the fungus is a normal inhabitant and is here all year round, there is no way you could keep a fungicide on the tree or shrub all year round to protect it. And so fungicides are not effective for controlling this disease. The only way that you can control the disease is to prune out infected branches, such as we have here, and then make sure you irrigate the trees and shrubs during times of water stress. So if we have a drought, you should try to water, especially things like rhododendrons and small trees, and especially going into the winter. You don't want your plants going through the winter conditions under drought stress. So later in the fall, you might be thinking about, even if there wasn't a drought, if we had relatively dry weather, you may want to irrigate the plants later in the fall to try to promote the vigor of the plant and then allow the vigorous plant to resist attack by botryoshaeria. When you're thinking about botryoshaeria and thinking about drought, then you should also be thinking about the planting location. One place that rhododendrons are frequently planted are along foundations, and especially around homes, they're planted right under the eaves of the buildings, and that's a very dry location. Now, there are some rhododendrons that will resist botryoshaeria even when there's a drought stress. There are some that over, say, a 5 or 6 year period, if they're observed, they will have less than 10% dieback over that period due to botryoshaeria. And those would be rated as resistant. But then there are many other cultivars that will have more than 10% branch dieback year after year, and then those are called susceptible varieties. So, as far as I know, there aren't any that are completely immune to this particular disease, but if you have to plant something like rhododendrons in a drought-prone area, you want to find out which ones tend to resist the disease and plant those. Otherwise, you want to make sure that the plants are not under drought stress.